Welcome to Mind Over Matter, Cultivating Mental Strength, brought to you by Mindful Literary. This isn't just another audiobook, it's a journey, a challenge, and a call to action. Imagine waking up each day with a mind as sharp as steel, ready to conquer whatever comes your way. In this audiobook, we'll dive into the raw, unfiltered truth about building mental resilience. Through relatable stories, practical tips, and powerful insights, you'll discover how to harness your inner strength, overcome obstacles, and transform your mindset. Get ready to unlock the true potential of your mind and live a life of purpose and power. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Awakening, Realizing My Potential. The day I decided to change. It was an ordinary Tuesday when everything felt extraordinary. I sat in my dimly lit room, staring at the scattered remnants of half-finished projects and forgotten dreams. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the weight of unfulfilled potential pressed heavily on my chest. That day marked a turning point. It was the day I decided to change everything. It began with a moment of acute awareness. I glanced around, noticing the clutter that mirrored the chaos in my mind. I was trapped in a cycle of mediocrity and complacency, plagued by self-doubt and fear of the unknown. I wanted more for myself, more for my life. But for the first time, I comprehended the nature of my inaction. The startling realization hit me. I had the power to decide, to choose differently. The notion felt liberating, yet terrifying. I imagined a life free from the shackles of my own making, where my potential flourished rather than withered in the shadows of complacency. Wouldn't it be exhilarating to grasp my dreams and mold them into a reality? The inner battle raged fiercely. Fear clawed at my resolve, whispering that change would only lead to failure. But in that moment, I refused to let fear dictate my future. With a deep breath, I stood up from my chair, feeling a surge of energy coursing through me. I had spent so long wishing for change while remaining a passive observer of my own life. It was time to reverse that narrative. I would ignite a fire within, a relentless pursuit of everything I had let slip through my fingers. The idea lit a spark deep inside, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. As I walked over to the mirror, my reflection stared back at me. No longer would I see the person I had become, someone who allowed fear to dictate his path. I would look into those eyes and see determination. The road ahead was undoubtedly fraught with challenges, but in that moment, I resolved to embrace them all. Change wasn't just a possibility, it was a necessity. And this was my awakening. Facing the mirror, a conversation with myself. As I stood in front of the mirror, the reflection staring back at me felt foreign and yet hauntingly familiar. The day had been a whirlwind of emotions, and I knew I couldn't hide from the truth any longer. I, Alex, was at a pivotal juncture in my life, longing to confront the shadows that lurked within. The flickering lights in my bathroom cast an ethereal glow, and for the first time in years, I truly looked into my own eyes. "Who are you?" I whispered, the question escaping my lips before I could contain it. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I waited a response. The stillness enveloped me, and it was as if the universe paused to listen. "You've been avoiding me, haven't you?" I pressed further, an unfamiliar resolve rising within me. Leaning closer, the face in the mirror mirrored not only my features, but my fears, doubts, and regrets. A concoction of emotions I had buried beneath layers of denial. Understanding my limits. For years, I had shackled myself with misconceptions about what I could or couldn't achieve. Each time I faced a challenge, a voice in my head echoed limitations I had adopted as truths. The anxiety it brought overwhelmed me, but one brisk morning, I decided it was time to confront this narrative. I asked myself, what if my limits were not obstacles, but potential pathways to growth? As I explored this concept, I started examining my fears, the very boundaries I had meticulously erected over the years. I jotted down everything that held me back: failure, judgment, inadequacy. Each word stared back at me, and I felt a flicker of empowerment. These limits seemed less like solid walls and more like clouds that could drift away with exposure to sunlight. It was a radical shift in perspective. I'd spent years avoiding my limits, and now I was attempting to understand them. In peeling back the layers of my limits, I began to see their duality. They were not just barriers. They held the potential for transformation. Each limitation had a counterpart, a lesson waiting to be learned. Instead of viewing my fear of public speaking as a stumbling block, I started to see it as an opportunity to develop confidence and courage. With this newfound understanding, the thought of stepping outside my comfort zone lost some of its terror. But then a darker thought ambushed me. What if embracing this idea only set me up for greater failure? The conflicting emotions swirled within me like a tempest, making me question if growth was worth the risk of pain. That night, in the dim glow of my desk lamp, I weighed my options. The fear of staying stagnant clashed fiercely against the fear of failing. Yet there was an undeniable spark of excitement igniting within me. In understanding my limits, I could finally begin to define my own path, a path not dictated by fear, but rather fueled by aspiration and resilience. I realized that every great achievement is born from the ashes of adversity. The tension in my chest grew heavier, but so did the anticipation of a new beginning. Could I dare to push past this fear? Or would I retreat once again, shackled by my own limits? Chapter 2. The Early Struggles, Learning the Hard Way, Falling into Old Habits. Despite the progress I had made, there were moments when it felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing between the person I was beginning to become and the person I used to be. One fateful evening, the weight of my past habits began to seep in. I found myself at my favorite takeout place, the familiar scents wrapping around me like a warm blanket. It was comforting, but I knew it was a dangerous lure, one that could unravel all the strides I had fought to take. The cycle was dizzying. I had made conscious efforts, yet in a blink of an eye, the lure of convenience snatched me back into old routines. As I sat there, mindlessly devouring food that I had promised myself to avoid, guilt washed over me like a tidal wave. I could almost hear the echoes of my commitment whispering in my ear, urging me to reclaim my choice. Was this all my progress meant to be? A fleeting moment, forgotten in the clutches of temptation. I wrestled with the thoughts swirling within me. Should I surrender and accept that this was just the way I was, or fight to retake control? As doubts flooded my mind, I realized that these old habits didn't take root in a vacuum. They were anchored in emotions, in the comfort of familiarity. But grappling with my feelings, I noticed the quiet truth beneath the chaos. Every choice, even this moment of weakness, was another page in my story. With that realization, the stakes felt higher than ever. I could feel the tension mounting, the battle between my longing for growth and the fear of failure crystallizing in the pit of my stomach. Confronting my inner critic. As I stood on the precipice of my own progress, a familiar voice began to echo inside my head, a whisper that grew louder with each small victory I achieved. "You're not good enough," it sneered. "What makes you think you can change? Remember all those times you failed?" It was my inner critic, that relentless nagging presence, a ghost of my past that had accompanied me on every journey. I could feel its icy grip tightening around my heart, threatening to pull me back into the shadows of self-doubt. I knew that to truly move forward, I had to confront this specter of negativity head-on. It wasn't easy, my palms felt clammy, and a pit grew in my stomach as I prepared to challenge the narrative that had dictated my life for too long. I found a quiet space, lit a candle, and took deep breaths, envisioning my critic as a separate entity sitting across from me. I wanted to wrestle with it, to dissect its words, and uncover the truth buried deep within those accusations. As the confrontation continued, I began to dismantle each falling brick of criticism that had been laid over years of self-sabotage. "You're not creative enough. You'll never succeed like others. You don't deserve happiness." With every jab, I responded with affirmations of my own. "I am creative. I am worthy of success. I deserve happiness." The dialogue felt like a dance, my inner critic's dark shadows clashing with the light of my self-acceptance. In that room, surrounded by flickering shadows, I realized I was no longer a victim to its torment. I had the power to rewrite the script, to reclaim my narrative from the clutches of fear. Yet, even as the voice withered under the weight of my resistance, I understood that this was just the beginning. I still had battles to face, and the most daunting ones were yet to come. The journey of self-discovery was rarely a straight path, and as I stood at that crossroads, I knew my inner critic would return. But I was ready to fight, to grow, to embrace every flawed part of myself as I stepped forward into the light. Moments of doubt. As I navigated through my early struggles, the path I had chosen often felt slippery beneath my feet. I, Alex, had just begun to embrace the changes I wanted to make, yet moments of doubt crept in like shadows, threatening to engulf me. It was during the quiet hours of the night, when the world lay still, that these doubts whispered insidiously in my ear, reminding me of all the times I had faltered in the past. How could I believe I could truly change? Each time I strove for progress, I seemed to backslide 2 steps. I had goals, ambitions, and a newfound sense of purpose, but the looming specter of failure haunted me. I, Alex, grappled with the vision of who I wanted to be versus the suffocating reality of who I felt I was. At times, I questioned if I was simply fooling myself, spinning false narratives to disguise the underlying truth of my incompetence. In those moments of high tension, clarity became my lifeline. I would seek refuge in paper and pen, pouring out my thoughts, my fears, my insecurities, until the ink ran dry. These writing sessions became both a catharsis and a confrontation, a battle against the relentless negativity core to my being. With every word I penned, I reminded myself of the reasons I had embarked on this journey, reaffirming my commitment to change as if it were a sacred vow. But doubt has an uncanny way of mutating. As I forged ahead, enchanted by the shimmer of my dreams, it wrapped itself around my newfound ambitions like a tightening noose. Every step I took towards self-improvement provoked a visceral reaction, a fear that I might, once again, prove myself wrong. I could feel it, the tension building within me, as if the universe were holding its breath, waiting for me to falter. Yet, here in my solitude, I understood one fundamental truth. Doubt, although paralyzing, was also a part of my growth. It was the chaotic energy of the universe working through me, challenging me to confront my fears head-on, to emerge stronger on the other side. Each conflict, each flicker of uncertainty was a testament to my humanity. I, Alex, learned that it was okay to struggle, to wrestle with doubt, as long as I didn't let it consume me. Eventually, I began to reshape these moments of doubt into a tool of empowerment rather than a weight that pulled me down. When I felt overwhelmed, I reached for my journal and reconstructed the narrative, reminded myself of my progress, of the victories I had won, however small. It was a reclamation of my destiny, a conscious decision to move beyond self-sabotage. And as I grew in affinity with this process, the tension within me shifted, becoming less about fear and more an invitation to challenge myself. Chapter 3. Finding my tribe, the power of community, connecting with like-minded souls. As I navigated the tumultuous waters of self-discovery, I soon realized that I didn't have to sail alone. Each day, I found myself more drawn to the notion of community, the idea that there were others out there, grappling with the same fears, dreams, and potentials as I was. I remember the day vividly. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over a small gathering in the local park. Scattered laughter and passionate discussions melded into a symphony of shared humanity, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a pulse of belonging. It was at that gathering that I met Sophie, a spirited entrepreneur who exuded warmth and wisdom. She spoke of her own struggles. Her journey mirrored my own. As our conversation flowed, I found solace in her words, recognizing fragments of my own story in her narrative. With each passing moment, the walls I had built around myself began to crumble. I realized I wasn't just listening. I was understanding, connecting, and for the first time, feeling seen. The connection deepened over the following weeks as I began seeking out additional gatherings, workshops, and forums brimming with like-minded souls who dared to dream big. Every person I met carried their unique story, their challenges and victories woven into a grand tapestry of shared experience. I began to see the world differently. It was no longer a vast sea of strangers, but a network of potential friendships waiting to be forged. Yet, as exhilarating as this realization was, it also ignited a flicker of fear within me. What if these connections were fleeting? What if, in my desperate need for understanding, I was setting myself up for disappointment? But then I recalled the sincere warmth of Sophie's smile and the sparking energy of the group as we shared our stories. I understood that true community thrives on authenticity and vulnerability, and suddenly, the fear that had once gripped me began to loosen its hold. I decided it was worth the risk. I leaned into the discomfort and embraced the wild, chaotic beauty of human connection. With every meeting, every open conversation, I transformed my fears into fuel, propelling me towards a future crafted not in solitude, but in the harmonious rhythm of shared dreams and collective aspirations. Yet, just as I started to embrace this newfound sense of belonging, an unexpected challenge emerged. A shadow of doubt crept in when I overheard whispers of division among the group, cynicism rippling through conversations that had once been cloaked in support. Had I put my trust in a fragile alliance? The worry gnawed at me, threatening to unravel the bonds I had worked so hard to create. My heart raced as I pondered whether I could defend our collective spirit or if I would be crushed beneath the weight of disillusionment. Building a support system. With each connection I made, Alex, felt a sense of belonging blooming within me, like the first signs of spring after a long, harsh winter. Connecting with like-minded souls became not just a necessity, but a lifeline, as I realized the immense power of community in my journey. I discovered that it was in the company of others, sharing dreams and fears, that I found the courage to face my own limitations. Guided by this newfound tribe, I began to construct a support system that would catch me when I stumbled and cheer for my successes. The gentle encouragements from those around me, the laughter shared over coffee, and the late-night discussions about our aspirations fueled my enthusiasm and commitment to change. We formed a circle, an unbreakable bond that held us accountable while lifting us higher. I learned to lean on them, and in exchange, I offered my support, solidifying our collective strength. Yet, amidst the warmth of camaraderie, there were moments of uncertainty where I questioned the depth of this connection. Was this system robust enough to withstand life's storms? Could it truly provide the safety I craved? As I delved deeper into this intricate network of support, I began to realize that no support system is infallible. It too required nurturing and trust. With every shared struggle and triumph, though, we wove a fabric of resilience that would carry us through even the darkest of times, forging an unspoken pact to stand by one another as we all navigated the complexities of our personal journeys. The stakes grew higher as I faced real challenges and setbacks, and I could feel the tension building. I was reaching out, seeking guidance from my tribe, pouring out my doubts and fears, while they mirrored my vulnerability back to me. It was then that I understood. Building a support system wasn't just about camaraderie, it was also about honest communication, trust, and sometimes the terrifying act of showing my complete self, flaws and all. As whispers of doubt began to creep in, testing this fragile structure we had built, I stood at a crossroads, torn between fear and faith. Would my support system hold strong when faced with the trials ahead, or would it crumble under pressure? The answer felt just within reach, hanging like the delicate threads of a spider's web swaying in the wind. It was then, in that moment of doubt, amidst the murmurings of anxiety, that I realized the true power of this community. We weren't just a collection of individuals. We were a living, breathing entity, ready to evolve and adapt through every challenge. The role of mentorship. Through mentors, Alex, gained valuable insights to navigate my journey. In my quest for growth, I knew I couldn't do it alone. It wasn't just about finding a community. It was about finding guides, those who had walked similar paths and could help me avoid the pitfalls they had encountered. The moment I opened myself up to mentorship was the moment I started to see the world through a prism of possibilities. Each story shared was a torch illuminating the dark corners of my uncertainty. Each mentor had a unique perspective, and as I absorbed their wisdom, I started to paint a clearer picture of my own desires and potential. There was Sarah, a fierce advocate for creative expression, who encouraged me to explore my artistic inclinations without fear of judgment. Then came Joseph, who had faced countless setbacks but never backed down. His mantra, "Failure is just a stepping stone," resonated deeply with me. I started to understand that my setbacks weren't signs of weakness. They were opportunities for growth, as long as I had the right mindset. Yet, it was during a particularly challenging session with Joseph that the idea of mentorship took a more profound turn. He posed a question that sent waves of discomfort coursing through me. What are you willing to sacrifice for your dreams? The weight of that question lingered in the air, wrapping around me, forcing me to confront the reality of my aspirations. As I delved deeper into that moment, I realized that mentorship was not just about receiving guidance, it was about giving in return. As I learned from them, I was also expected to share my journey, my struggles, my triumphs, thus creating a symbiotic relationship that flourished in vulnerability. It dawned on me, mentorship was a two-way street, and it was this revelation that made me question everything about my journey and my choices moving forward. Chapter 4. The First Breakthrough, Small Victories, Celebrating Small Wins. I, Alex, learned that the path to my transformation was not defined solely by monumental milestones. It was the simmering victories, the quiet achievements of every day, that began to accumulate and light my way. I remember a time when I would set sky-high goals, feeling disheartened when they seemed out of reach. Yet, in a moment of clarity, I recognized that every small step forward was a testament to my progression. The first time I celebrated a small win was after completing a week of daily journaling. It felt trivial, insubstantial, compared to the grand vision I held in my heart. But as I sat there, flipping through those pages filled with my thoughts, I realized each entry was a piece of my journey. I felt an overwhelming surge of accomplishment. If I could write daily, I could transform my life, one entry at a time. The act of acknowledging that small win was the fuel that ignited my drive. However, in the midst of this newfound enthusiasm, I faced an unexpected hurdle. I encountered days where forcing myself to celebrate felt mechanical, almost hollow. I vividly recall a particularly grueling day when self-doubt clawed back, whispering that I was merely deceiving myself. As I stared at the small post-it notes on my wall, each scribbled with a tiny triumph, I wondered if it was enough. What if all these small victories would lead to nowhere? The uncertainty brewed within me like a storm, threatening to shatter the delicate structure I had been building. And just when I thought I might succumb to the weight of despair, something remarkable happened. I reached out to my community, pouring out my fears and struggles. They listened intently, and then one by one, they began sharing their own small victories. Suddenly, the tension eased as we wove our stories together, transforming vulnerability into strength. It was a reminder that this journey wasn't solely about my growth, it was intertwined with the lives of others. This realization ignited a new wave of determination within me. I grasped the significance of celebrating small wins, not just as isolated events, but as components of a larger collective spirit. My story wasn't just my own, it was part of a tapestry of resilience and hope. I resolved to honor every little victory, knowing they had the power to propel me forward, and in that moment, I became more than just Alex. I became a part of a movement, an advocate for acknowledging every single step in the march towards our dreams. With every week that passed, my commitment deepened. Small celebrations, whether a joyful morning coffee or an affirming message to a friend, became embedded in my routine. But an undercurrent of tension throbbed beneath the surface, propelling me towards something chaotic and beautiful. I felt a shift, an energy swirling that hinted at greater victories on the horizon, waiting just beyond the veil. The small wins accumulated like pebbles in my hand, and soon I realized I was clenching a boulder ready to be launched into the vast unknown. What awaited me was uncertain and yet thrilling in its potential. The taste of victory was sweet, but a deeper craving stirred within, a longing for the next big breakthrough. The ripple effect of progress. The small progress Alex made had a profound ripple effect in my life. It was like watching a stone being thrown into a calm lake. The initial splash was small, but the waves expanded outward, touching everything in their path. Each small victory I celebrated opened new doors, shifting my perspective and increasing my confidence. I found myself embracing challenges with newfound gusto, energized by the understanding that my actions had the power to transform not only my fate, but also the lives of those around me. As I celebrated these small wins, something remarkable began to happen. Friends and family started to notice the change in my demeanor. They became curious about what had ignited this shift within me. With every shared story of perseverance and minor achievements, I inadvertently sparked a flame of inspiration in others. My enthusiasm appeared contagious. People approached me, seeking advice or simply wanting to share in my joy. I relished these moments, realizing I wasn't just changing my own world, I was touching theirs too. Gaining momentum. Momentum is a powerful force. It builds gradually, like a snowball rolling down a hill, gathering size and speed as it descends. I, Alex, began to feel that exhilarating rush as I leaned into my small victories, each one a spark igniting my determination. With every step forward, I could almost taste the sweet essence of progress, so tangible that I couldn't help but crave more. It started with the littlest things, waking up early, sticking to my goals for the day, completing tasks I'd once considered daunting. These couldn't be brushed aside as mere trivialities. No, they held weight, each victory a stitch in the fabric of my growing confidence. I learned to see the potential in daily rituals, the way small, positive changes could compound into something extraordinary. The thrill was intoxicating, like a jolt of adrenaline feeding my desire to push harder. As the days turned into weeks, I noticed a change within me. What once felt like an uphill battle transformed into a series of exhilarating challenges. The obstacles that had once loomed like towering giants now seemed more like stepping stones. With every small win, I felt a surge of energy propelling me forward, each success resetting my trajectory for the better. It was as if I had tapped into an invisible current of motivation, one that refused to let me fall back into complacency. But the journey was not without its shadows. Doubt began to creep in, whispering insidious thoughts that sought to undermine my newfound momentum. I questioned whether I was moving fast enough, if my small victories were enough to lead to true success. As the week rolled on, the pressure began to bubble beneath the surface, a reminder of my past struggles. The fear of slipping back into old habits loomed large, threatening to drown out the progress I had made. In those moments, it felt like hearts and minds from my past clutched at my ankles, trying to pull me back into the abyss of defeat. I knew this was a critical juncture in my path. I had to recognize this tension, this turmoil, as part of the journey. Rather than succumb to it, I could use it to sharpen my focus, to transform my anxiety into action. If I wanted to soar, I needed to confront those demons with the strength I'd gained from my small victories. The real battle was just beginning. It felt daunting, but somewhere deep within, a flicker of resilience ignited. I longed to break free from the clutches of fear, to embrace the challenge head-on. To keep gaining momentum, I would have to summon every ounce of courage, drawing from all I had achieved thus far. Just as I felt my heart racing from the pressure, I also felt the undeniable thrill of potential waiting beyond that massive wall of doubt. It was time to transform that energy into something greater, a force unstoppable in the pursuit of growth. Chapter 5. Overcoming Fear, Embracing Risks, Identifying My Fears. As I sat in my dimly lit room, the weight of the world felt heavier than usual. The silence buzzed around me, a stark contrast to the tumultuous thoughts racing through my mind. I, Alex, had always been one to brush aside my fears, treating them like pesky insects that could be swatted away with bravado. But that evening was different. An unfamiliar urge stirred within me, a compelling desire to pull back the layers and confront the shadows lurking in my heart. It was time to identify what truly scared me. I grabbed my notebook, the worn cover feeling comforting against my fingers, and began to list my fears. The first few were easy: heights, public speaking, the fear of failure. But as I sat there, quills scratching against the paper, I realized something deeper was at play. I was afraid of disappointment, not just from others, but from myself. The prospect of reaching for greatness, only to fall short, gnawed at my insides like an insatiable pest. With each word I penned, a tight knot in my stomach began to unravel. I wrote of vulnerability, of connection, and of the terrifying notion that I could be alone in my journey. I feared the unknown, the very essence of change that I craved yet dreaded in equal measure. My thoughts drifted to the people I admired, the lives they led, and how fear had woven its way into their stories. I wondered if they, too, had stared into the abyss of their insecurities and grappled with their shadows in silence. As I put my pen down, the glow of the evening light started to fade, casting long shadows across the room. Yet, Within that darkness lay a flicker of determination, the realization that I had opened a door to a new chapter of my life by simply acknowledging my fears. The fear of stagnation, of staying trapped in a loop of mediocrity, crept in next, whispering promises of regret. I took a deep breath, letting the heaviness wash over me, understanding that recognizing my fears was merely the first step. The real challenge lay ahead, a battle not just against the fears themselves, but against the silence that had nurtured them for far too long. Suddenly, the flicker of determination morphed into a blaze of resolve. I would not let fear dictate my life's trajectory. But first, I had to confront these fears, sift through the chaos, feel the chill of anxiety, and transform it into the fuel for my journey. As I sat in the darkness, I realized that the courage required to face my fears was a muscle yet to be fully developed. It quaked within me, timid but yearning to grow stronger. And in that moment, I vowed to take the first step toward overcoming the overpowering shadows that threatened to hold me back. Taking the leap. In the quiet moments before dawn, I, Alex, stood on the precipice of transformation, my heart racing as waves of doubt washed over me. I took a deep breath, feeling the chill of morning air against my skin, a stark reminder of the fear that had held me captive for so long. It was time to confront the unknown, to step beyond the comfort of my familiar cocoon and into the vast expanse of possibility that lay before me. I visualized the leap, my feet leaving the solid ground beneath me and soaring into an uncertain sky. It was exhilarating and terrifying, a thrilling cocktail of emotions swirling within. Yet what haunted me most was the reality of staying still, of allowing fear to dictate my life choices. Would remaining in my safe bubble truly bring me happiness? Or would it suffocate my dreams, slowly eroding the potential I had fought so hard to awaken? The moment of truth arrived, and with it a single thought crystallized in my mind. Growth is found in discomfort. In the fleeting silence, I felt the weight of my past decisions, the instances where I had let fear win. But today wouldn't be one of those days. I resolved to take the leap, not just for myself, but as a testament to anyone else standing at the edge of their own fears. I took a step forward, my heart racing, knowing the thrill of uncertainty awaited. As I launched myself into the unknown, the world around me blurred into a whirlwind of colors and sensations. I felt both weightless and heavy, my fears clinging to me like a persistent shadow. But I also felt alive, a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins, reminding me this was precisely where I needed to be. I surrendered to the moment, embracing the freedom that came with letting go and the exhilaration that followed. But just as I began to taste the sweetness of my bravery, doubts creeped in, threatening to shatter my newfound courage. What if I fell? What if I didn't soar as I hoped I would? In that moment of dissent, I yearned for the security of earth beneath my feet, but I refused to yield. I had made my choice, and amidst the chaos, I focused on the thrill of the leap itself. With a fierce determination, I channeled every ounce of my being into faith. Faith that I would land. Faith that regardless of the outcome, I was on my path to growth. The fear that had loomed so large shrank beneath the weight of my resolve. I was not just leaping into the unknown. I was launching into a new chapter of uncharted adventures and profound self-discovery. And with that realization, I discovered an unfamiliar sense of peace amidst the storm I had chosen to embrace. As gravity pulled me into reality, I had a fleeting moment that seemed to stretch for eternity. A second where the abyss and sky intertwined, and I found clarity in the chaos. I was taking the leap, not just for myself, but everyone who had ever hesitated at the edge. Would they see my courage and find their own? The thrill surged through me again, potent and electric. Even as I began to descend, I understood that this leap was far more than a physical act. It was my statement to the universe that I was ready for change. The sound of my heart echoed in my ears, but it was no longer fear ruling the rhythm. It was the cadence of hope, adventure, and potential, all waiting just beyond the brink. As the ground approached, fierce winds of possibility filled my lungs, and in that exhilarating moment, I felt an undeniable truth. Real growth comes not from avoiding fear, but from confronting it, from choosing to leap even when the outcome is unsure. And so, surrendering to the unknown, I embraced the leap that would lead me to a life rich with experiences yet to unfold. Celebrating the courage. In that transformative moment when I, Alex, stood on the precipice of change, I fully comprehended that courage isn't the absence of fear. Rather, it's the fuel that propels us into the unknown. Every heartbeat echoed my fears: doubt, rejection, failure, but I chose to amplify the rhythm of my bravery over the sound of my insecurities. I looked around at the faces of my newfound tribe, each individual a beacon of strength and resilience. It was impossible to ignore the warmth of their encouragement, wrapping around me like a protective cocoon. With every step taken into uncharted territories, I began to celebrate the small victories that came with embracing risk. The first time I shared my ideas publicly, my voice quivered, yet the applause that followed resonated deeper than any fear that had once haunted me. I learned that courage isn't just about individual acts. It's a shared experience that ignites a collective fire within those around us. I found inspiration in watching fellow dreamers take their leaps, and in that, I discovered the power of vulnerability as a catalyst for growth. Every act of courage was a thread woven into the fabric of my evolving identity. I began to consciously document these moments, embracing them as milestones on my journey. Whether it was approaching someone I admired or tackling a daunting project at work, I celebrated each instance, big or small, as triumphs that signified the dismantling of my fears. But with every celebration also came the tension of what lay ahead: an uncertain future filled with the potential for both glory and disappointment. As I stood there, on the brink of my next challenge, I felt the waves of fear crash against my resolve. Would I continue to celebrate my courage, or would I falter in the face of the unknown? Chapter 6. The Power of Mindfulness, Being Present, Discovering Meditation. It was a crisp morning when I first sat on the edge of my bed and decided to try meditation. The world outside surged with life. Cars honked, leaves rustled in the autumn breeze, but inside me was a chaos that felt all-consuming. I, Alex, sought refuge in silence, searching for clarity buried beneath the noise of my thoughts. As I crossed my legs and closed my eyes, a deep breath echoed in the stillness. I felt the fraying threads of anxiety tangling around me, refusing to let go. Yet I was determined. The first few moments were a battle against my own mind, thoughts darting like wild birds, flapping against the bars of my consciousness. What would I have for breakfast? Did I leave the lights on? Was today the day I'd finally face my deepest fears? But slowly, as each breath inched deeper, those thoughts began to dissipate. Guided by the rhythms of my breath, I began to peel back the layers of intrusive noise. There was an unfolding within me, a settling of my spirit as I took the dive into stillness. In the midst of that calm, something profound happened. I became a witness to my own existence. My emotions, usually tempestuous, transformed into gentle streams, flowing freely yet peacefully. The clarity I longed for revealed itself in whispers, speaking truths I wasn't ready to hear. But just as I began to feel the sweet taste of serenity, a louder thought crashed through the tranquility. What if I was doing it wrong? What if this was all a fleeting illusion? I felt the familiar grasp of doubt gripping my chest. I battled it, reminding myself that this was merely a practice, a step toward mastering the wild anomaly of my mind. The tension built, a tight coil in my gut. What if meditation wouldn't bring the change I desperately sought? What if I failed again? In that pivotal moment, I realized that uncertainty was a part of the journey. With each inhalation, I began to embrace it. As I sank further into the practice, I found a reservoir of strength hidden beneath the fear. The tension that had initially threatened to unravel me instead began to weave a tapestry of resilience, illuminating the stark contrast between my mind's chaos and this newfound stillness. As the session drew to a close, I opened my eyes with a heart still racing. I was enveloped in a sense of calm, but the tension of uncharted waters loomed ahead. I had only dipped my toes into this vast ocean of mindfulness. There was so much more to explore. With uncertainty swirling around me, I embraced the discomfort. This was just the beginning, a path paved with moments of stillness and storms of self-discovery, leading me toward the clarity I craved. The art of gratitude. As I sat cross-legged on the floor, the daylight filtering through the window, I began to understand that gratitude was more than a fleeting feeling. It was an art form. I, Alex, breathed deeply, closing my eyes to dive into a practice that would transform how I viewed my life and the world around me. Each deep inhale drew in a sense of peace, while each exhale seemed to dissipate my worries and fears, laying the groundwork for what would become a powerful shift in perspective. It was a gentle process at first, acknowledging the routine aspects of my day, the warmth of my morning coffee, the laughter of a friend, the beauty of a sunset. I began to see that gratitude didn't have to be reserved for monumental moments. It could thrive in the mundane, waiting silently for me to recognize its presence. I, Alex, started jotting down these reflections in a journal, releasing the weight of negativity that often clouded my mind. With each written word, I unleashed the power of appreciation over despair. However, this newfound appreciation was soon put to the test. Life's challenges began to loom larger than ever, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. It was easy to express gratitude when everything felt light and hopeful. But as unexpected setbacks arose, disappointments at work, misunderstandings with friends, moments of self-doubt, I found myself grappling with the notion of gratitude amidst chaos. I, Alex, confronted my resilience, questioning whether gratitude could truly coexist with life's darker moments. I knew I was not alone in this struggle, and this understanding sparked a deeper commitment within me to explore the intricacies of gratitude, no matter how turbulent the journey became. Suddenly, as I sat recalling these thoughts, a sense of urgency surged through me. I was on the brink of discovering something profound. Gratitude is not merely a reactive emotion. It's the foundation on which I could anchor myself during tumultuous times. In that moment, I resolved to actively cultivate gratitude, seeking it even when shadows loomed large, refusing to let external circumstances define my internal landscape. The true challenge lay ahead. Would I be able to hold on to this belief when confronted with the inevitable storms of life? And as that tension brewed within me, I knew the art of gratitude was about to teach me something I had never imagined. Practicing presence in daily life. In the chaos of everyday life, it's easy to get lost in the whirlwind of thoughts. I, Alex, found myself constantly racing through my days, often overwhelmed by the pressure of expectations and the noise of the world around me. Realizing I was missing the beauty of the present moment sparked a transformational journey toward practicing presence in my daily life. It began on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Rushing through my routine, I hurriedly brewed coffee, half listening to the news blaring from the radio while scrolling through notifications on my phone. In that moment, I paused. A profound stillness enveloped me as I set my cup down. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, inhaling the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. For that fleeting second, I was anchored in the present, and it felt exhilarating. I resolved to cultivate that feeling. Throughout the following weeks, I intentionally integrated mindful moments into my day. During my walk to work, instead of being lost in thought, I focused on the gentle rustle of leaves, the warmth of the sun kissing my skin, and the subtle rhythm of my footsteps against the pavement. I discovered that by embracing these moments, I found a sense of peace that kept me grounded, no matter how turbulent life became. I learned that presence wasn't just reserved for serene moments. It was a practice I could apply in every interaction. When engaged in conversations, I began to listen, not just hear, my friends, family, and colleagues. I noticed how it transformed my relationships, deepening connections, and fostering an environment of trust and understanding. Yet, with every breakthrough came challenges, particularly when distractions re-entered my life, pulling me away from the serenity I had worked so hard to cultivate. Then one afternoon, while savoring a moment of clarity at the park, disaster struck. As I sat on a bench, immersed in the beauty of a moment, a sudden argument erupted behind me, shattering the tranquility. My heart raced as irritation flared up within me. I felt the urge to escape the chaos, but an inner voice nudged me to stay. Instead of resisting the noise, I took a breath and shifted my focus, allowing it to be part of the moment. I realized how quickly I had reverted to old patterns of avoidance, illustrating just how fragile my newfound presence truly was. The tension escalated as my discomfort danced with determination. I could either yield to chaos or embrace it as part of my journey. I chose the latter. Engaging with the noise around me, I reflected on how often I had allowed external factors to dictate my peace. By surrendering to the moment, even amidst discomfort, I understood that true mindfulness encompasses both serenity and chaos. My heart calmed as I consciously returned to my breath, reaffirming my commitment to practice presence regardless of my surroundings. As I exited the park, a wave of determination surged through me. I knew challenges would arise, testing my resolve and relationship with presence. Yet, having tasted both the beauty and the struggle, I felt ready to face the world with a renewed spirit. The path was fraught with tension, but it was a tension filled with promise, a promise that every moment, no matter how chaotic, had the potential to teach me resilience and grace. In that understanding, I knew the journey of practicing presence was just beginning, and I was more than ready to embrace every moment ahead. Chapter 7. Resilience, Bouncing Back from Setbacks, My First Major Failure. It was a bright Monday morning when the weight of my aspirations crashed heavily upon my shoulders, and I, Alex, faced the grim realization of my first major failure. After months of persistent grind and unwavering focus, I had poured every ounce of my energy into a project that encapsulated my dreams. I believed it would not only launch my career, but also validate my worth. I submitted my proposal with a hopeful heart, eager for the approval I felt I deserved. But the feedback I received was a crushing blow, a rebuttal that shattered the vision I had built so fervently. The rejection letter taunted me from the screen, each word a sting that resonated deep within my core. Not aligned with our objectives, it stated coldly, as if it were simply a business transaction and not the culmination of my hopes. I could almost hear my inner critic's laughter echoing in the background, reminding me how foolish I was to have believed in my own potential for success. The setbacks began to stalk me like shadows, lurking in the corners of my mind, feeding doubts I had tried so hard to silence. I, Alex, felt utterly defeated and isolated. Days bled into weeks as I wrestled with my disappointment, replaying every detail of my failure on a loop in my mind. I felt as if I were in a storm, buffeted by relentless winds of self-doubt and feelings of inadequacy. With each passing day, my confidence dwindled more, and the once bright fire of ambition dimmed to a flicker. What hurt the most was not merely the failure itself, but the shocking realization that I had poured my soul into something that hadn't mattered in the grand scheme of things. It's a cruel irony that sometimes our most passionate pursuits crumble under the weight of unrealistic expectations. But amidst my despair, I began to sense the seed of resilience trying to break free within me, hinting at the possibility that perhaps this failure could fuel my growth. How could I ever reconcile my shattered dreams? The thought hung on my mind like a heavy fog. But one pivotal night, while staring into the mirror, I whispered the question that had been buried beneath the rubble of my own defeat. What can I learn from this? That question ignited a spark of determination, shunning the shadows of my fears. I started to see my setback not just as a loss, but as a moment, a juncture from which I could reinvent myself. It was a wake-up call, prompting me to ask myself tougher questions about my worth and my path. Despite the bittersweet ties that failure wove into my heart, I realized the only way to honor my dreams now was to rise, strong enough to face the storms ahead. This realization would soon set the stage for everything that followed, a decision to redefine what resilience truly meant to me. As I reflected on my journey, I understood that falling wasn't the end. It was merely a stepping stone toward a more profound understanding of my capabilities. But I had a long way to go before I could truly embrace this new chapter, and the journey to discovering that strength had only just begun. Reframing my narrative. It was in the aftermath of my first major failure that I, Alex, found myself standing at a precipice, a decision point where I could either wallow in the depths of my despair or rise up and glean strength from my missteps. The echoes of disappointment were loud. They reverberated in my mind like a haunting melody I could neither ignore nor escape. Yet, amidst that cacophony, a soft whisper beckoned me toward a different path, a path framed not by failure, but by the potential for growth. As I sat alone in my dimly lit room, I began to sift through my memories of that fateful event. Each recollection felt like a dagger, piercing deeper with self-doubt. But instead of succumbing, I decided to pick apart the narrative, reconstructing the story behind my failure. I asked myself, what lessons lay hidden within that disappointment? I realized that every setback was a brushstroke on the canvas of my resilience, a testament to my determination to keep pushing forward. Reframing my narrative became an act of rebellion against the negative script I had unwittingly accepted. I, Alex, became the author of my own story. The failure that once held me captive transformed into a source of empowerment. It was no longer the end. Instead, it was a fuel that ignited the flames of resilience within me. With each word I penned in my mind, I began to see the colors of possibility emerge from the shadows, illuminating a path littered with the stones of my past mistakes. In that realization, a sense of urgency gripped me, a promise to rewrite the story I had allowed others to define for me. The tension grew within as I envisioned the struggles I faced not merely as failures, but as stepping stones toward achieving my aspirations. I felt the weight of each setback morph into a lesson, transforming my relationship with adversity. After all, if I could find strength in my struggles, then I could create a narrative soaked in resilience, one that would inspire both myself and others. As I sat at my desk, with every heartbeat echoing my resolve, I knew I was on the brink of something profound. The whispers of my past transformed into a clarion call for change. I was ready to take my first leap into the unknown, armed with my reframed narrative, one that would not simply recount the trials and tribulations, but would illuminate the lessons learned and the growth achieved. And as the tension of my decision loomed, I felt an undeniable wave of hope wash over me, promising unrevealed potential just waiting to be unlocked. The promise of tomorrow. As I stood on the precipice of my latest setback, the weight of failure pressed down on my chest like a leaden shroud. I, Alex, felt as though shadows cloaked all my dreams, whispering to me that perhaps I was not meant to succeed. Thrown back into the depths of self-doubt, I battled the familiar urge to retreat, to curl up and hide from the bright possibilities that lay ahead. However, deep within me flickered a stubborn ember of resilience, a promise that ignited a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. It was in this moment of despair that I realized the incredible power of tomorrow. Tomorrow wasn't just another day on the calendar. It was an opportunity, a fresh slate where dreams could be rekindled. I remembered how my journey had unfolded so far, each struggle a stepping stone toward growth. My setbacks didn't define me. Rather, they had become the building blocks upon which my strength was forged. With every failure, I learned that the true essence of resilience lies not in the absence of failure, but in the unwavering determination to rise each time we fall. This understanding washed over me like a healing balm. As I stared into the twilight, a canvas painted with distant stars, I thought about what promised to come. In the heart of each challenge was a lesson waiting to be discovered, like a hidden treasure buried beneath the sands of time. The twists and turns of my path were merely chapters of a greater story, one that could inspire not only me, but others to harness their own resilience. With newfound clarity, I embraced the power of tomorrow, feeling the weight of my fears begin to lighten, making space for hope, possibility, and the ever-present promise of a new dawn. But with this hope came an undeniable tension, a feeling of uncertainty cloaked in the anticipation of what lay ahead. I closed my eyes and imagined the steps I would take. Each one forward would challenge me to push through discomfort and fear of the unknown. Yet beneath all that anticipation simmered a gentle reminder: something extraordinary awaited me. The battle against self-doubt would continue. The inner critic would always cast shadows over my aspirations, but I had come to learn that those shadows could never extinguish the light of commitment within me. Each day is a promise that I will evolve, that I can reclaim the narrative of my life, and that tomorrow holds the potential for triumph. Chapter 8: Emotional Intelligence. Understanding Myself. The Journey Inward. As I began my journey inward, I felt a mixture of trepidation and determination. Sitting quietly in my room, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my expectations settle on my shoulders. This wasn't just another phase of self-improvement. It was a deep dive into the complex layers of who I truly was. I, Alex, understood that to comprehend my emotions fully, I needed to explore the hidden corners of my heart and mind. With each moment of reflection, I peeled away the superficial layers of my persona. I confronted the vulnerability that had been masked by my outward confidence. How often had I silenced my true feelings? How often did I put on a brave face while my heart screamed for acknowledgement? Each thought seemed to echo louder than the one before, pushing me to dig deeper into the recesses of my emotions. Each day, as I engaged in this journey of introspection, I discovered a road filled with both illuminating insights and unsettling truths. I recognized patterns in my emotional responses, the triggers that ignited anger, sadness, or joy. It became clear that by understanding these dynamics, I could transform them into tools for personal growth rather than obstacles. But there was a storm brewing beneath the surface, and I could feel its approach. The deeper I delved, the more complicated the feelings became, culminating in a chaotic swirl of confusion and clarity. One evening, under the dim glow of my desk lamp, I stumbled upon a memory that shattered my facade. The room felt charged, and I knew this was a defining moment. The emotion surged within me, demanding to be felt, to be acknowledged. I sat there, teetering on the edge of understanding and denial, as I realized that this was not just another challenge to overcome. It was a part of me that needed to be embraced, and it terrified me. Was I ready to face the full spectrum of my emotions? The doubts crept in, whispering that perhaps this journey inward would expose the darkest parts of myself, thoughts and feelings I had long buried. Yet deep down, I knew that true emotional intelligence called for not just recognition, but acceptance. I had to confront the fear that intertwined with my identity. It was in this burgeoning chaos that I realized, sometimes to heal, one must first endure the storm. As I leaned into the emotional tempest, I felt traces of something profound beginning to unfold within me. Little did I know, the further I ventured into the depths of my psyche, the more clarity I would eventually gain. But I wasn't there yet. My heart raced with uncertainty as I steeled myself for the unraveling that awaited. Could I embrace the raw, unfiltered truth of who I was? This journey inward was becoming more than just an exploration. It was a reckoning, and I felt both exhilaration and dread surge forward in equal measures, culminating in a tension that left me breathless. Harnessing my emotions, as I delved deeper into my emotional landscape, I, Alex, began to recognize that my emotions were not merely fleeting feelings to be suppressed or ignored. They were powerful signals, each one holding a message about my desires, fears, and needs. The realization washed over me like a tide. It was time to stop reacting to my emotions and start harnessing them. In quiet moments of reflection, I began to map out my emotional responses to various situations. I recalled instances when anger flared up like a volcano, or sadness crept in like a shadow, threatening to pull me under. Instead of brushing these emotions aside, I leaned into them, asking myself what they were trying to teach me. This process was transformative. It allowed me to view my feelings as allies rather than adversaries. One particular incident stands out. I was in a heated discussion with a close friend about our differing life choices. Tempers flared, and I felt my chest tighten, the heat of frustration simmering at the edges of my consciousness. Instead of letting it explode, I took a moment to breathe. I acknowledged my frustration, giving it space to exist without judgment. In that pause, clarity emerged. I articulated my feelings, not as accusations, but as honest expressions of my vulnerability. The conversation shifted from confrontation to connection, deepening our friendship in ways I never anticipated. The true challenge, however, lay ahead. I found myself standing at the crossroads of a major life decision, a choice that could either propel me towards my dreams or anchor me in complacency. Doubts clawed at me, questioning my capacity to harness my emotions effectively. What if I failed? What if I let my fear dictate my actions? With emotions swirling around me like a tempest, I recognized that harnessing them required practice, courage, and unwavering commitment. Was I ready to take that leap? As I stood on the precipice, I felt the weight of my emotions, a cocktail of anxiety and hope, crash over me. This was not just about confronting fear, it was about embracing the full spectrum of human experience. My heart raced, my mind buzzed, and I realized that this pivotal moment would define my journey. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs with resolve. It was now or never. Could I harness this wild storm inside me and turn it into a force for growth? Only time would tell, but in that moment, I felt a flicker of strength ignite within. Empathy as a strength. As I continued my journey inward, I began to recognize a profound truth. Empathy was not just a quality to be admired from afar, it was a strength I could cultivate. I, Alex, found myself reflecting on past interactions, realizing how often I brushed aside others' emotions, too focused on my own struggles. But through this newfound self-awareness, I understood that connecting emotionally with others would unlock doors to deeper relationships. In the moments spent understanding the lives of those around me, I felt a shift. When a friend shared their struggle with anxiety, I listened, not with the intention to solve their problems, but to simply be there. I discovered that lending an ear and heart not only provided comfort to them, but also opened a space for genuine connection. Each empathy-filled moment fostered understanding, including some I would have previously dismissed as trivial. I began to see how every gesture, every smile, and every act of kindness could ripple out to create waves of positive impact. However, as I honed this sensitivity, I faced an unexpected challenge. The more I absorbed the emotions around me, the heavier they sometimes felt. I started to realize that with the strength of empathy came vulnerability. There were days when the weight of others' pain felt unbearable, and I questioned whether this gift was a blessing or a burden. Was I putting myself at risk of emotional fatigue? And as the voices of doubt crept in, I had to confront a lingering fear. What if embracing empathy meant losing myself in the struggles of others? The tension built within me, teetering between the need to connect and the fear of becoming overwhelmed. In the midst of emotional turmoil, I made a choice. I decided to embrace empathy, not just as a tool for connection, but as a bridge to not only understand others, but myself as well. Through this process, I discovered that empathy was not a weakness, but a waterway that could navigate me toward resilience. I resolved to channel this empathy into a deeper understanding of my own emotions. With every shared story, every moment of connection, I felt the possibility of growth expanding before me, even as I teetered on the edge of uncertainty about what it all meant for my path forward. Chapter 9. Goal Setting, Creating a Vision for My Life. Dreaming big, as I sat on my porch, the sun dipping below the horizon, a thought struck me with the weight of destiny. I had been dreaming too small. The horizons of my ambitions were barely kissing the edges of my potential, and I felt an irrational excitement crackling in the air. Could I dare to dream big? Could I envision a life that was not just a shadow of what I had, but a blazing spectacle, alive with endless possibilities? With a heart hoping to burst from my chest, I closed my eyes and allowed myself to wander into the realms of imagination. Images flitted through my mind, traveling the world, deeply engaged in projects that sparked joy, impacting lives, and leaving a legacy of inspiration. I could feel my pulse quickening with each vibrant scene I conjured, as if a wave of vibrancy surged through me, awakening a hunger for more. But then, doubt crept in, whispering insidiously that those dreams were too grand, too ridiculous for someone like me. Who was I to imagine? I was just Alex, the ordinary, the forgettable. My thoughts collided with reality, and I could almost see the stereotypes of my upbringing, the limits imposed by my environment, and the fears that clouded my vision. Yet, in that moment of hesitation, I remembered that every monumental success began as a wild dream, a tiny spark in a vast universe. What if this was the pivotal moment, the threshold that separated my past from the possibilities of my future? Could I wrench myself free from the confines of my own mediocrity? The walls of doubt felt too sturdy, but what if I took a step back and viewed my dreams through a different lens? An ember of determination ignited within me, and I envisioned setting audacious goals, a challenge to not only confront my fears, but to fully embrace them. The question loomed large: how does one transition from dreaming to doing? With newfound urgency, I understood I needed clarity, a vision that would ground my aspirations. Time would not wait. Opportunities would not linger. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my journal, filled with the dreams I had kept unspoken for far too long. The blank pages ached to be filled, to burst forth with the vibrant thoughts swirling in my head. With every stroke of my pen, I dived headfirst into audacity, writing out goals that scared me, yet exhilarated my spirit. I wanted to write a book, not just any book, but a gut-wrenching narrative of my journey, with all its imperfections and triumphs, to inspire others that they too could shatter their ceilings. I dreamed of organizing workshops to help others find their tribes, to build spaces of support and encouragement. I envisioned traveling across the globe, connecting with diverse cultures, and drawing from their wisdom to enrich my own understanding of life. The tension mounted in my chest as I closed my eyes. These were not whimsical dreams, they were a declaration of my intent. I was ready. A part of me hovered, terrified of the fallout of aiming so high, of risking disappointment if I fell short. Yet, a greater fear gripped me, the fear of remaining stagnant, of never knowing the limitless heights I could reach. The flickering candle of hope urged me to go further, to vow not to dismiss everything I envisioned. With every goal I penned, the spark inside me ignited into an inferno, flooding my soul with purpose. The time had come to shatter the chains of self-doubt and aim high, to showcase not only what I could achieve, but also who I was meant to become. My heart raced, and my breath quickened as I felt the exhilarating rush of ambition surging through me. This was my turning point. The winds of change were whispering my name, urging me forward into the brimming unknown. In this moment, I realized daring to dream big was not just about envisioning a grandiose future. It was about courageously stepping into it. Each day moving forward, I would hold on to this moment, this promise of potential burning brightly, the promise that I am Alex and I have the power to create a life far beyond my wildest imagination. The SMART Goals framework Alex, realized that to transform my dreams into reality, I needed a solid framework to guide my journey. That's when I stumbled upon the SMART Goals framework. It was like a beacon illuminating my path, a shimmering promise of clarity and direction in the midst of my swirling aspirations. The first pivotal realization struck me: specificity. My dreams could no longer float hazily above my head like wisps of clouds. I had to define them precisely to give them shape and substance. For example, instead of saying I want to be fit, I needed to articulate it as I will run a 5K in under 30 minutes by the end of the year. This specificity ignited a fire within me. I could see it, feel it, breathe it. Next came measurability, the key element that would allow me to track my progress. I needed tangible milestones to assess my journey. I devised a plan that included weekly runs, gradually increasing my distance, and a running log to document every step. With each week that passed, I could see the numbers climb, each small victory fueling my motivation. Then there was achievability, the gentle nudge to ground my dreams in reality. I understood that while dreaming big, I must ensure that my goals were within reach. For instance, while a marathon seemed enticing, attempting to jump straight into it wouldn't serve me well. I needed to embrace incremental steps, training my body and my mind one stride at a time. Relevance followed closely behind, reminding me of the importance of aligning my goals with my core values and aspirations. I assessed my goals against the backdrop of my life vision. Did running align with my desire to lead a healthier lifestyle? Absolutely. This alignment filled me with purpose, with a deep-rooted conviction that fueled my journey. Finally, the time-bound element introduced a sense of urgency. Setting a deadline helped me shake off procrastination and infused my journey with a rhythm. Suddenly, my personal goal of running that 5K transformed from an ambiguous future endeavor into a concrete challenge that I now had mere months to prepare for. The pressure ignited within me an urgency that was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. With each component carefully woven into the tapestry of my goals, I had a map, a roadmap leading toward my dreams. Yet, as I sat down to finalize my objective, a flicker of doubt crept in. What if I failed? What if I couldn't achieve what I had structured so diligently? As my heart raced, I found myself standing at the precarious edge of excitement and fear, battling the anxiety that clashed with my hopeful aspirations. But then, a profound realization washed over me. The framework itself was designed to adapt, to learn, and to grow. Failure was not a dead end, but merely a detour. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension build around me. As I embraced this newfound courage, I understood that the next step, taking action, was where true transformation lived. The time had come to leap into the unknown and trust the structure I had built, creating a roadmap. Alex, sat down one evening, the gentle hum of city life outside my window echoing my fervent thoughts. It was time to take the nebulous dreams swirling in my mind and give them form, time to create a clear path ahead. With wide-ruled paper spread across my desk, I felt a surge of determination as I prepared to translate my aspirations into actionable steps. The first thing I did was reflect on my dreams. I closed my eyes, imagining the life I desired. It was vivid, a blend of personal achievements, career milestones, and the relationships I wished to nurture. But dreams alone wouldn't propel me forward. They needed structure and clarity. I recalled the SMART goals framework, a tool I'd stumbled upon during my journey of self-discovery. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. With each word resonating in my mind, I knew I had to define each of my goals through this lens. With renewed vigor, I began articulating my goals. I wrote them down slowly and deliberately, pausing after each line as if to let them sink into my heart. Complete a marathon, launch my own business, cultivate deeper friendships. These were not just bullet points, they represented pieces of my future self. Next, I transformed each goal into actionable milestones, creating a timeline that stretched before me like an untraveled road. For my marathon, I outlined a training schedule, factoring in short, achievable runs that built progressively to longer distances. For my business, I identified initial steps, conducting market research, attending relevant workshops, and networking within my community. Each small task felt empowering, each completed milestone a step closer to the life I yearned for. But then, a feeling of doubt crept in, threading through my excitement. What if I could not stick to this roadmap? What if I stumbled again? The thought hit me like a heavy punch, leaving an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. But I had promised myself that I would not let fear stifle my potential. I reminded myself of my past achievements and how every challenge had transformed into an opportunity. As I penned down my milestones, a wave of excitement washed over me, washing away the creeping doubt. This roadmap wasn't just a list of to-dos. It was a promise of my commitment to myself, a testament to my determination. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. I understood that while the roadmap would guide me, it would not dictate every twist and turn. Life is fluid. I had to remain adaptable, open to the unexpected. Finally, I stepped back, glancing at the roadmap sprawled across my desk. It felt vibrant, alive. This was the foundation upon which I would build my future, a future that was no longer just a distant dream, but a canvas waiting for my brush. But as joy sparkled within me, so did a flicker of anxiety. What challenges awaited me down this path? I knew that the real test was yet to come, and with it came a wave of tension that sent a shiver of anticipation down my spine. Chapter 10. Discipline, the backbone of success, building new habits. As I embarked on this transformative journey, Alex, began focusing intently on building new habits that aligned with my aspirations. It was clear to me that change wouldn't happen overnight. It required a dedication to small but impactful actions that could be woven seamlessly into the fabric of my daily life. I contemplated the significance of habit formation and how it would ultimately serve as the backbone for the discipline I was striving to cultivate. Determined to lay a solid foundation for my future, I started by identifying the habits I needed to embrace. Each morning, I set an intention, dedicating time to meditate and visualize my goals. It felt strange at first, like I was reaching for something just out of my grasp. But as the days turned into weeks, I noticed subtle shifts. The more I committed to these practices, the more clarity I found in my purpose. I realized that success wasn't a singular event. It was a series of choices made consistently over time. However, the road was not without its hurdles. There were days when I found myself drowned in distraction, my old habits whispering tempting promises of comfort. The struggle was palpable, and I felt the familiar tug of procrastination and doubt. It was in these moments I understood the true test of my resolve. Would I surrender to the weight of my past, or would I rise to meet the demands of my new life? The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating, as I prepared to confront this pivotal decision. As I stood at this crossroads, I took a deep breath and made a promise to myself. I would not allow fear to dictate my actions any longer. Instead, I chose to lean into the discomfort, to embrace the uncomfortable reality of change. I found solace in the knowledge that growth often lurked just beyond the edge of my comfort zone. But the true challenge lay ahead. Could I maintain these new habits long enough to witness the fruits of my labor? As I stood tall, the weight of both possibility and uncertainty loomed large, compelling me to take that next courageous step forward. The daily grind. Embracing the daily grind was not something I took lightly. Alex, had heard countless times that success is a marathon, not a sprint. But those words echoed differently when I found myself deep in the trenches, fighting for every inch of progress. Each morning, armed with my to-do list, I would hurl myself into the chaos of tasks, a whirlwind of ambition and intention swirling around me. The first week was exhilarating. I woke up early, laced up my running shoes, and hit the pavement. The crisp morning air felt like a promise, washing over me with hope and determination. I meticulously mapped out my day, crushing each item on my list with the enthusiasm of a child playing a new video game. But like any game, my enthusiasm began to wane. The novelty faded, and soon the relentless march of routine began to weigh heavily on my shoulders. By the end of the month, the grind transformed from exhilarating to exhausting. It was as if I were treading water, each stroke growing slower, my body protesting against the effort. I felt the flicker of self-doubt creeping back in, threatening to extinguish the fire I had so painstakingly ignited. Was I cut out for this? In the quiet moments between the scheduled tasks and the interactions, a voice whispered. A voice that questioned every effort I made, every early morning I embraced, every sacrifice I endured. But then, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, clarity struck. I understood that discipline wasn't just about rigid adherence to a schedule. It was about commitment to a process. I was learning to dance with the grind. Mondays might feel relentless, but by Fridays, I could feel the strength I was building, a testament to all the small victories I was achieving while navigating through fatigue and doubt. I began to notice the little things, the way my body responded to regular workouts, the clarity in my mind as I indulged in quiet moments of reflection, and how my conversations with supportive friends invigorated my spirit. The grind wasn't just a means to an end. It was an evolution, crafting a version of myself I had only just begun to see. Yet just as I was finding my rhythm, life threw a curveball. An unexpected challenge emerged, the stakes heightened, threatening to unravel everything I had worked so hard to build. Questions flooded my mind, each one more daunting than the last. Could I withstand this test, or would the daily grind, which had once seemed like my backbone of success, shatter under pressure? As I faced this looming uncertainty, the tension within me grew. It was a pivotal moment that could either define my journey or derail it entirely. I stood at a threshold, heart racing as the world around me blurred, waiting for me to make my next move. Accountability partners. As I delved deeper into the discipline that would mold my success, Alex, soon realized that building new habits was much easier with someone by my side. Enter my accountability partners, the unsung heroes of my transformation journey. They weren't just individuals who checked in on my goals. They became my pillars of strength, my conscience urging me to stay true to the promises I made to myself. I remember my first meeting with Jenna, a fellow aspirant driven by her own quest for growth. We met at a small cafe, both nervously sipping coffee as we shared our dreams and fears. In that moment, I felt a sense of camaraderie blossom between us. We each presented our goals like precious gems, ready to expose not only the brilliance of our ambitions, but also the dull spots, our doubts and setbacks. We gave each other the freedom to be vulnerable, to lay bare our weaknesses, knowing that this honesty would serve as the bedrock of our partnership. As weeks progressed, our check-ins became a ritual I cherished. Every Monday morning, Jenna would text me, "How did you do this week?" It felt like a gentle nudge, a reminder of the accountability we shared. No longer was I dancing alone in the shadows of my fears. I was now part of a duet, harmonizing our aspirations, tackling setbacks together. We celebrated each victory, however small, and shook off the bitterness of failures quickly through the support we provided one another. Yet the real test came when both of us faced our most significant challenges. One fateful afternoon, I found myself spiraling down a dark path of self-doubt after receiving a harsh critique on a project I had poured my soul into. It felt like the world was rebuking my very existence, and in that moment, I considered giving up on everything I had fought so hard for. I was breathless with despair when Jenna called me, sensing that something was off. Her voice cut through my fog, filled with unwavering determination. "Alex, remember when we talked about resilience? I need you to remember why you started this journey, even when it's hard," she insisted. Her words turned down the volume on my inner critic, but I still felt a simmering resentment toward myself. "But what if I fail again?" I sighed, wishing I could erase the doubt that tainted my resolve. The silence lingered for what felt like an eternity, the weight of unspoken fears hanging heavy in the air. "What if you succeed?" Jenna countered, igniting a spark of hope within me. I grasped that troubling question, the penultimate challenge that demanded a response, and it hung there, beckoning me to push through my cowardice. That pivotal moment reminded me that accountability partners aren't just cheerleaders. They challenge you to face the flame of uncertainty and dance in its light. With renewed vigor, I laid my fears bare and realized that I wasn't merely striving for my own success. I was pushing the boundaries for both Jenna and myself, a realization that tightened the bond we shared, powerful and electric. But as our accountability grew, doubt began to creep into my thoughts like a dark cloud ready to burst. What if one day we found ourselves in competition? What if my success would lead to her downfall, or vice versa? Even as Jenna and I lifted each other up, I felt a sliver of fear threatening to unravel what we had built together. Was I prepared to risk losing her friendship for the sake of ambition? Or was the ambition meant to be shared, to be embraced as a collective power? With these thoughts swirling in my mind like a tempest, I knew I had to confront this latent fear, not just for myself, but also for Jenna. The next rendezvous loomed ahead, a singular moment that could redefine our journey or tear us apart. My heart raced with the potential of what our conversation could unleash. The tension hung thick as I prepared myself for a dialogue that had the potential to change everything, a test not just of discipline, but of the very core of our partnership. Chapter 11. Mental Conditioning, Training My Mind, Visualizing Success. The moment I decided to train my mind, visualization became my secret weapon. I, Alex, learned to paint vivid pictures of my successes, whether it was standing on a stage, sharing my story, or achieving goals I had once thought were unattainable. I closed my eyes and felt the rush of accomplishment wash over me, as if I were already there. Every detail mattered. The texture of the microphone in my hand, the lights warming my face, the sound of cheers echoing in my ears. Each image created was more than just a daydream. It was a blueprint of the future I wanted to forge. But there were moments of doubt that crept in, threatening to shatter my carefully crafted images. I, Alex, would find myself questioning if I was worthy of the success I envisioned. Would the universe reward my efforts, or was I destined to remain an observer in my own life? In those moments, I leaned into my visualization practice more than ever. I crafted new scenes in my mind, moments not only of triumph but of resilience, where I overcame adversity. I began to see setbacks as integral parts of my journey, fueling my desire to keep painting my future with vibrant strokes of perseverance. Yet as I delved deeper into this practice, I encountered an unexpected twist. One evening, as I prepared for a visualization session, a voice in my head began to distort my images. "What if you fail?" it whispered. "What if it doesn't happen?" I felt a chill run down my spine, and for the first time, panic bubbled beneath the surface of my usual calm resolve. My once vibrant visions faded to gray, stained by the fear that had woven its way into my psyche. I was standing at a precipice, faced with the daunting realization that mental conditioning was not just about creating positive images, but also about confronting the shadows that loomed within. With courage ballooning in my chest, I took a deep breath. I, Alex, reminded myself that every layer of fear was a part of my story. I needed to visualize not just the success, but the journey, the challenges, the fears, and the resilience that came from overcoming them. As I dove back into my visualization, I found clarity within the chaos. I imagined transforming my fear into a powerful motivator, one that propelled me forward instead of holding me back. I would embrace the doubts, not as chains, but as stepping stones towards my ultimate success. But as the visualization progressed, I now faced another question. Could I truly harness this newfound perspective? The tension thickened within me as I visualized my future, wrestling with the balance between fear and ambition. Could I create a life where my dreams were not just visions, but realities? It was this moment, a clash between aspiration and anxiety, that marked the turning of a new page in my journey of mental conditioning. And as I peered into the depths of my mind, the line between fear and success began to blur, setting the stage for a transformative leap forward. Positive affirmations. Standing in front of the mirror, I, Alex, began my journey into the empowering world of positive affirmations. I didn't yet realize how transformative this practice could be. Each morning, I would look into my own eyes and, with quiet determination, recite phrases that stirred something deep within me. I am enough. I am capable. I will succeed. At first, the words felt foreign, almost out of reach, but with each repetition, I began to notice a faint flicker of belief igniting within my core. The power of words quickly became apparent as I immersed myself in a daily ritual that altered my mental landscape. I started small, jotting down affirmations on sticky notes, lovingly placing them on my bathroom mirror, my workspace, everywhere I could see them. The initial skepticism faded into curiosity and then blossomed into hope. With each affirmation, I could sense my internal dialogue shifting, like the steady turn of a ship beginning to find its true course. I had taken the first steps toward rewiring my mindset. Yet, as I embraced this new practice, insecurities lurked in the shadows, whispering doubts that threatened to derail my progress. During moments of vulnerability, when the weight of my past failures felt too heavy to bear, the affirmations became a lifeline. Closing my eyes, I would anchor myself in the truth of my words, letting their warmth wrap around me like a protective cloak. I am stronger than my fears. I am worthy of love and success. In those fragile moments, I found not just fleeting comfort, but the very foundation of resilience. But the real test of my affirmations came on a day when everything seemed to fall apart. I faced a disheartening setback that wrapped around my spirit like icy fingers. It was in that moment of despair that I truly needed to lean into the affirmations I'd cultivated. I closed my eyes and remembered the significance of each phrase echoed in my mind. Suddenly, each word pulsed with energy, battling against the darkness that threatened to engulf me. I will rise above. I am not defined by my mistakes. As I resurfaced from that emotional dive, I realized I could choose to embrace my affirmations, not just as words, but as my guiding compass. As I emerged from that experience, I recognized that positive affirmations were more than a passing trend. They were a powerful tool for reprogramming my thoughts and redefining my identity. I began to share my journey with others, spreading the word of affirmations' potency, encouraging them to harness their voices and shape their realities. Each time I spoke those affirmations aloud, I felt my confidence swelling, a ripple effect of empowerment affecting not just me, but those around me. Perhaps the greatest affirmation of all was this: I had the power within me to transform my life, the power of self-talk. As I navigated through the complexities of my journey, one significant revelation emerged. The voice inside my head was both my greatest ally and my fiercest adversary. I, Alex, began to realize that self-talk wasn't merely a passing thought, but a profound dialogue that shaped my every action, every belief, and ultimately my destiny. In moments of doubt, when the chaos of my thoughts spiraled like a tempest, I learned to cultivate positive self-talk. On the days when the narrative turned dark, penetrating my peace with doubt and insecurity, I fought back with affirmations. I am capable, I am brave, I am worthy. Each word became a shield, repelling the harsh critiques I'd internalized over the years. This wasn't just about encouraging myself, it was about drowning out the voices that sought to diminish my worth. Yet the transformation wasn't instantaneous. There were days my inner critic screamed louder than my encouraging mantra, shrouding my accomplishments in a veil of not good enough. I sat in silence, contemplating the intensity of this internal battle. The turning point arrived one fateful evening as I looked at my reflection, seeing more than just a face. I recognized the immense power I held over my thoughts. This was my mind, my reality, and I could shape it. The stakes were high. If I wanted to succeed, to truly embrace who I was becoming, I had to confront the discouraging self-talk that held me back. And so, the war began. I deployed a strategy. Whenever the critic raised its ugly head, I would counterattack with my affirmations, fortifying my self-belief. I was relentless in practicing this new dialogue. There were moments of frustration, times I faltered and succumbed to negativity, but each setback was a lesson, each misstep an opportunity for improvement. With every passing day, I felt the tides turning. My self-talk evolved into a compassionate conversation, reflecting not just who I aspired to be, but who I was in essence. But just when I thought I had mastered the art of self-talk, I confronted a seismic challenge that would put my newfound skills to the ultimate test. As I faced opportunities and risks that pushed me out of my comfort zone, the old whispers of doubt crept in, seeking to destabilize the progress I had made. "What if you fail?" they taunted. "You're not strong enough to handle this." The tension mounted within me, a palpable knot of anxiety tightening around my chest. I could feel the pressure, the weight of self-doubt bearing down as I stood on the precipice of a decision that could change my life. As I took a deep breath, preparing to silence the critic once and for all, I caught a glimpse of the potential waiting on the other side of fear. It was time to unleash the true power of my self-talk, to transform it into a roaring mantra that would drown out the negativity. I am prepared. I am resilient. I will rise. The conclusion of this internal dialogue loomed large as I steeled myself for the leap ahead, knowing full well that the outcome rested on the battlefield of my mind. Chapter 12. Facing the critics, external noise handling negative feedback. As I stared at the glowing screen of my laptop, the words from the latest critique were still rattling around in my mind. "Lack of depth," it read. "Missed the mark entirely." I had poured my heart into that piece, and yet here I was, doubting myself under the weight of someone else's disappointment. It felt like every ounce of progress I had made was unraveling, one word at a time. In moments like these, self-doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest, demanding a seat at my table of thoughts. I could hear the echoes of the inner critic that had been silenced for so long. "They're right," it sneered. "You'll never be good enough." But amidst that noise, I fought hard to remember how far I had come. This wasn't the first time I had faced criticism, and it wouldn't be the last. I needed to reframe my mindset. Perhaps the feedback was not a reflection of my worth, but rather an opportunity for growth. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes to silence the urge to spiral down that familiar path of despair. Instead, I prioritized perspective. Why did this feedback hurt so much? Was it not simply one person's opinion? As I pondered this, clarity washed over me. Each critique could either be a dagger or a stepping stone. The choice was mine. With renewed resolve, I decided to digest what was useful, discard the rest, and emerge stronger, rather than allow external voices to dictate my self-worth. Yet, as I reflected on how to handle negative feedback constructively, doubts lurked in the corners of my mind. What if I couldn't overcome this? What if the next critique was harsher, more damning? As the clock ticked away, my anxiety grew palpable. The fear of failure had always been an unwelcome companion, but in that moment, it felt like an insatiable beast, threatening to consume my newfound confidence. The walls of self-doubt began to close in, and I had to push back or risk losing everything I had worked for. Ultimately, I knew that handling negative feedback was less about the feedback itself and more about my response to it. I refused to let that single comment define my journey. I gathered my thoughts, purposefully reminding myself of the positive feedback I had received and the victories I had celebrated. Armed with this inner conviction, I outlined a plan to tackle future critiques head-on, not as stumbling blocks, but as valuable lessons. The tension in my chest began to ease, but I could still feel the lingering doubt whispering its familiar song. How would I turn this moment into fuel rather than fire? The answers would come in time, but one thing was certain: I was determined not to let the critics dictate my narrative. The true battle lay ahead, one where I would have to continuously choose resilience over vulnerability, certainty over fear. Filtering voices as I embarked on my journey to embrace my authentic self, the cacophony of voices around me grew louder. Surrounded by opinions, some encouraging, others downright dismissive, the challenge became sifting through this noise. Each voice seemed to pull at me, urging me to conform to their perception of who I should be. There it was again, that whisper of doubt, echoing in my mind. Maybe they are right, it said. I could hear the sting in the words of those who dismissed my ambitions. You're not cut out for this, they declared, their judgments sharp and unyielding. I felt myself being drawn into a web of fear and uncertainty, each critique threatening to unravel my hard-won confidence. But deep down, somewhere beneath the layers of criticism, I understood that filtering those voices was not just a necessity. It was an act of survival. I needed to cultivate a mental filter, one that would allow only constructive feedback to seep through and leave behind the rest, everything that did not feed my growth. It was a struggle, yet in it lay my power. The realization hit me. I was not meant to be an echo of others' thoughts. I was here to create my own symphony. I decided to take action. I grabbed a notebook, setting the stage for a new ritual. Each time I encountered a voice that threatened my self-belief, I would write it down. This ritual would serve two purposes: acknowledgement and release. Once a week, I'd revisit these notes, examining if these criticisms held any truth or simply reflected others' fears. Slowly, I began to see patterns, and with each revelation, a layer of weight lifted off my shoulders. Yet there was always that lurking doubt. One evening, filled with the resolve to be unapologetically myself, I found myself scrolling through social media. I saw posts from peers celebrating milestones that I yearned for. As envy twisted in my gut, voices began surfacing again. You're falling behind. You should have been there too. It was suffocating, an unbearable pressure closing in on me. In that moment, just as I teetered on the edge of despair, I remembered my filter. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and envisioned my shield, a powerful barrier against negativity. I reminded myself of the commitment I made to filter out the noise that threatened to drown my spirit. With each breath, I inhaled strength and exhaled doubt, pushing back against the onslaught of opinions that didn't reflect my truth. As the darkness began to lift, I felt a surge of energy. This wasn't just about ignoring the critics. It was about enriching my life with voices that mattered, those that encouraged growth and spoke to my potential. I resolved to create a new environment for myself, a sanctuary where affirmation and understanding reigned supreme. I wanted to surround myself with allies, those who uplifted rather than diminished my dreams. But just as I began constructing this new reality, a familiar voice crept in, my inner critic reminding me of unfulfilled dreams and lingering fears. "What if you fail?" it whispered. "What if they were right all along?" The tension in my chest tightened. I was at a crossroads, caught in the tumult of my emotions. Could I truly silence the voices, or was their echo woven too deeply into my psyche? In that moment of vulnerability, I caught a glimpse of my tenacity. If I could face these external voices head-on, perhaps I could reframe the narrative that played in my mind. I knew this would be a battle, but maybe, just maybe, it was one I was destined to win. Staying true to myself. In the depths of criticism, when shadows danced along the edges of my self-worth, I, Alex, found myself at a crossroads, caught in the clutches of external expectations. The voices around me, sometimes whispers, other times cacophonous roars, attempted to mold me into images that felt foreign and heavy. As I closed my eyes and listened to the noise, I could hear the doubts creeping in, the strident tones of skepticism from those who thought they knew better. They often dismissed my dreams as impractical, brandishing their opinions like swords, eager to slash through the very essence of who I wanted to become. I understood that the art of staying true to myself wouldn't come without a fight. I reflected on my journey thus far, the moments of triumph and the countless struggles. Yet, amidst the turmoil, I yearned to hold on to my authenticity. I postponed fleeting thoughts of conformity and steeled my resolve. I remembered the conversations in the mirror, the day I decided to change, and the dreams that grew louder each day. They were buried beneath layers of doubt, clamoring for visibility as I suppressed their calls in an attempt to appease my critics. No longer. I would not let their perceptions drown out my voice. I vowed to engage in a fierce reclamation of my identity. It became essential for me to establish a filtration system for the onslaught of external opinions. I began to differentiate between constructive feedback, insights that ignited the fire of growth, and destructive criticism that sought to extinguish it. My heart raced as I consciously chose to hold space for those whose words nourished my spirit rather than deplete it. The journey of self-actualization required both courage and discernment. I knew that navigating the external noise demanded vigilance, and the stakes were high. My true self hung in the balance. Yet, as the noise grew louder, shattering the serene spaces I had cultivated within, I faced a gnawing anxiety, a question that coiled tightly in my mind. Would I have the strength to remain resistant against the tide of doubt, or would I one day wake up and find myself standing at the edge of someone else's blueprint for my life? My heart pounded as I grappled with the fear of losing myself entirely. I couldn't afford to let that happen. Perhaps the greatest rebellion would not be in fighting back, but in standing firm, heroically embodying my authentic self despite the unsettling voices. As I stood on that precipice, I felt the weight of judgments and critiques linger ominously around me. But in that pivotal moment, a flicker of conviction ignited within. I realized that true courage lay in embracing our flaws, our quirks, and our dreams, however aspirational or unrealistic they may seem. It was time to fortify my determination, to echo back against the critics with a resounding declaration. I am here, I am enough, and I will stay true to myself. Chapter 13. The Balance, Work, Life, and Everything in Between. Finding My Center. As my journey unfolded, I, Alex, grasped that the chaos of life, work deadlines, personal commitments, and the ever-looming sense of urgency made it imperative to find my center. I felt like a leaf caught in a storm, swirling without direction. To regain control, I knew I needed to embrace self-care practices. It started slowly. Mornings once occupied by frantic email checks transformed into sacred moments of stillness. I created a ritual, a few minutes of deep breathing followed by a rejuvenating stretch. This simple act grounded me, allowing me to start my day with intention rather than reaction, but I was constantly confronted with the challenge of staying committed. Then came a pivotal moment when I recounted my frantic week. Each morning began with good intentions, yet by midday, the demands of work would sweep me away, drowning out any semblance of peace I had coaxed into existence. I felt the tension rise within me, a whispering discomfort that grew louder each day. It was in this moment of clarity that I realized maintaining balance is not just about self-care. It's about creating boundaries that protect that sacred space. I dove into setting those boundaries, forging a path through the noise of expectations. I learned to say no to certain demands, to carve out time that was solely mine. It wasn't easy. The guilt from declining invitations or postponing tasks weighed heavily on me. Yet with each boundary I established, I could feel my center strengthening, my confidence blooming like a flower reaching for the sun. Still, doubt lingered. Would this newfound serenity withstand the pressure of expectations? As days turned into weeks, a profound realization dawned upon me. Life would continue to throw challenges my way, but I could choose how I responded. Making time for joy amidst responsibilities became my secret weapon. I started to treat life like a balance sheet, ensuring that for every obligation, I countered it with moments of joy, laughter with friends, a solitary walk in nature, or losing myself in a good book. Each joyful moment rekindled my spirit, but in the back of my mind, shadows of my old life whispered doubts. Was I truly deserving of this happiness? In the heart of my struggle, I began to question whether I could sustain this balance. It felt delicate, like walking a tightrope. Would I be able to hold on to my peace when the calls from colleagues and the pull of responsibilities grew stronger? The impending storm brewed, and I felt it coming. I had to brace myself. Setting boundaries. As I embarked on my journey towards finding balance, I, Alex, began to recognize the necessity of setting boundaries. Every day felt like a whirlwind, spinning me further away from my true self and my aspirations. My colleagues demanded more time, friends expected constant availability, and my own ambitions clashed with the realities of life's obligations. In that chaos, I realized it was time to draw lines that would protect my well-being and allow me to focus on what truly mattered. The first time I set a boundary, it felt like an act of rebellion. I informed my boss that I would no longer be checking emails after 6 p.m. The moment the words left my mouth, my heart raced, a mixture of fear and exhilaration flooding my senses. Would they respect my decision, or would I be seen as uncommitted? Nonetheless, I took a deep breath, knowing that I was claiming my time back, inch by inch. That single decision transformed my evenings. I rekindled my passion for painting, allowing colors to spill onto the canvas, providing an escape from the grueling demands of my day job. Yet setting boundaries was not without its trials. My friends did not understand at first. Invites dwindled, replaced by unsolicited comments about being too busy or acting different. In my stillness, I questioned whether I was being antisocial or merely protective of my space. A wave of doubt crashed over me, but as I reflected on my choices, I became resolute. I didn't wish to push others away. Instead, I was creating a sanctuary where I could breathe and flourish without pressure. Summer was upon us, and the warmth reminded me of better days, scenes of laughter, friends gathering, and evenings spent sharing stories. Despite my newfound clarity, the shadow of guilt loomed large whenever I turned down an outing. It hung over my head like a storm cloud, prompting questions. Am I missing out? Am I truly happy? I wondered if I'd become a recluse in pursuit of balance, but in those moments of uncertainty, I remembered the promise I made to myself, to choose growth over guilt. The turning point arrived during a particularly exhausting week. An invitation to a friend's party appeared on my phone, and instinctively, I felt the pull to decline. A simmer of anxiety rose as I drafted my message. Would this be the moment to stand firm, or would I bend under the weight of social pressure? Slowly, I typed out my response. Thanks for inviting me, but I need to take time for myself this weekend. With a deep breath, I hit send. Instead of dread, I felt liberation wash over me. The moment I took a step back, I realized I was slowly reclaiming control over my life. That moment of uncertainty unfolded layers, revealing the intricate dance of boundaries. With each choice, I stood at a crossroads where freedom and guilt coexisted. This was not merely about saying no. It was an exploration of what I was willing to allow in my life. Understanding each rejection of chaos paved the way for deeper clarity. I, Alex, was on the edge of a significant realization. The struggle of boundaries wasn't just a fight against others. It was a profound journey into self-discovery, where tensions built and released like a tightly wound spring, preparing me for the leap into a well-balanced life. Making time for joy. In a world filled with meetings, deadlines, and endless tasks, I, Alex, often found myself swept away by the current of my responsibilities. It became alarmingly easy to forget the simple pleasures of life, those moments of joy that had once made my heart sing. But as I reflected on my life during moments of quiet, I realized that joy was not merely a luxury. It was a vital component of balance, a lifeline tethering me to my humanity amidst the chaos. So, I made a conscious decision. I would prioritize joy. It felt radical, almost reckless. I began by carving out small pockets of time in my day, initially dismissing that this act could reshape my reality. Choosing to indulge in my favorite hobbies, immersing myself in the pages of an exciting novel, baking aromatic treats, or simply enjoying a beautiful sunset felt like a guilty pleasure in the face of looming deadlines. Yet, I quickly discovered that those fleeting moments had enormous power. They nourished my spirit and rejuvenated my mind. Each time I invested in joy, I noticed a profound shift within me. I approached my work with renewed energy and passion, allowing creativity to flow freely again. But the most remarkable change happened when I began to share joy with others. I organized laughter-filled gatherings with friends, shared my baked goods, and embraced spontaneous adventures. These moments cultivated connection, weaving a community of warmth around me. But as I lost myself in this newfound appreciation for joy, a nagging question lingered at the back of my mind. Could I sustain this happiness amidst the weight of my responsibilities? The more joy I embraced, the more I felt it challenged the prevailing notion of busyness as a badge of honor. The fear of judgment, a fear that I might be seen as frivolous or irresponsible, crept into my thoughts, making me question whether I was drifting toward the edge of productivity's abyss. It was a dangerous precipice, and as I danced recklessly close to it, I felt my heart race with tension. Then came a critical moment, one that would test my commitment to joy. I was faced with a pivotal deadline at work, the kind that required my total focus and energy. As the clock ticked unmercifully, the shadow of stress loomed larger, yet the joy I had carefully cultivated tugged at my heart, urging me to step back and remember why I had chosen this path. It begged me to question, was sacrificing my moments of joy truly worth the temporary accolades of a completed project? I was caught in a tug-of-war between obligation and happiness, and as I stood at that crossroads, the tension tightened around me, forcing me to confront my very definition of success. Chapter 14. The Legacy of Mental Strength. Reflections on my journey. As I sit here, the noise of the outside world fading away, I reflect on my journey, a profound path woven with challenges, growth, and resilience. I, Alex, have come to realize that each step taken, each stumble endured, and every victory celebrated has contributed to the legacy of mental strength I now embody. It's a bittersweet realization. While I had to wrestle with my demons, ultimately, they were essential in sculpting the person I have become. In earlier chapters of my life, I allowed fear and self-doubt to dictate my choices. But as I reflect, I can see the monumental shifts that have occurred. The moments that once felt insurmountable are now mere stepping stones that remind me of my tenacity. The raw discomfort of facing my fears laid the groundwork for a newfound resilience that guides me today. I remember the first day I chose to leap into the unknown. My heart raced and my hands trembled. But it was in that leap that I discovered the freedom that comes from embracing vulnerability. As I draw deeper into these reflections, there's an undeniable urge to share my insights with others. I realize that the lessons learned are not just mine. They are universal truths waiting to inspire others on their journey. With every conversation and every story shared, I feel the energy shift. The cycle of growth and transformation continues, rippling outward, inspiring others to find their strength amidst adversity. Yet, despite this sense of purpose, a hint of doubt lingers at the edges of my mind. Have I truly learned enough to guide others? And what if my own growth is still incomplete? These questions swirl around me as I forge ahead, eager to embrace the next chapter, yet acutely aware that the journey is far from over. Passing on the lessons. As I stood at the front of the room, illuminated by the soft glow of the overhead lights, I felt both empowered and vulnerable. The faces staring back at me reflected a wide array of emotions: curiosity, skepticism, and hope. I, Alex, was about to share the lessons that had reshaped my life, lessons born from countless struggles and triumphs. It dawned on me that passing on these lessons wasn't just about imparting knowledge. It was about forging connections and igniting sparks of change in others. I began by recounting my own story, the journey that started with a simple decision to change. I spoke of the days when I was adrift, lost in self-doubt and fear, facing that haunting mirror revealing my inadequacies. They listened intently as I described the elation of realizing that my limits were merely illusions, barriers I could dismantle brick by brick. I could see in their eyes a flicker of recognition, a shared understanding of those internal battles. As I shifted topics, speaking on the transformative power of community and support, I could sense the tension in the room swell. They craved connection, just as I had. I highlighted the importance of finding one's tribe, those who uplift and inspire, and I spoke of the mentors who had guided me through thorny paths. I encouraged them to build their own support systems, reminding them that no one should navigate this journey alone. Their heads nodded in unison, a symphony of agreement. But then, as the clock steadily ticked towards the end of my talk, I introduced the idea of mindfulness. I shared breathing exercises I had adopted, the stillness that accompanied meditation, and how gratitude shifted my perspective. My voice softened, and I could hear the collective intake of breath in the room, the anticipation building like a pressure cooker nearing its boiling point. I knew I was tapping into something deeper, something each of them desperately sought. However, I could feel the tension crackle in the air. What if I had failed to convey my truth? What if they walked away unchanged? The fear pinched at my insides, and I fought against it. But this was part of the lesson, too. Fear is a constant companion on the journey of growth. It's okay to be afraid, I said, my eyes scanning the room, locking on to individuals as I spoke directly to them. But do not let that fear paralyze you. Instead, let it propel you forward. Time felt distorted as I approached the concluding remarks, my heart pounding in anticipation. I challenged them to take one small step each day to celebrate even the smallest victories. The energy in the room shifted palpably, excitement mingled with trepidation. They were ready to embrace change, yet a part of them hesitated. Would they dare to leap beyond their comfort zones? Would they be willing to pass on the lessons they learned to others, creating an unbreakable chain of growth? I stepped down from the podium, the weight lifted, yet transformed into a new kind of responsibility. I realized that the lessons I had learned wouldn't truly take flight until they were carried forward by those who were willing to embrace their own journeys of mental strength. The cycle of growth had begun anew, and all I could do was trust that I had ignited the flames within them, urging them to forge their own legacies. The continuous path of growth. As I navigated my journey, I, Alex, began to embrace the truth that growth isn't a destination, but a continuous path filled with twists, turns, and detours. It was during a particularly challenging moment that I first understood this profound reality. I found myself at a crossroads, feeling the weight of complacency tug at the corners of my ambition. It was a subtle yet persistent whisper, a reminder that the comfort of yesterday could easily dull the edge of my potential. Determined to push through the stagnation, I revisited the lessons I had pieced together along the way. Each setback I had faced was more than just a hurdle. It was a stepping stone crafted from experience, patience, and resilience. I remembered the trepidation that came with each risk I'd taken, each leap into the unknown. These memories reignited my passion, reminding me that every challenge was an opportunity for growth, pushing me beyond the limits I once placed upon myself. With this realization, I crafted a new mantra: embrace the discomfort. I repeated it like a prayer, whispering it in moments of uncertainty and self-doubt. I dived headfirst into activities that both excited and terrified me. I signed up for a public speaking course, knowing that the voice that once quivered with fear now sought to inspire others. I reached out to people I had admired from afar, mentors, trailblazers, and others who had weathered storms like mine, and opened my heart to their wisdom. Yet, as I took these strides forward, doubts crept in, much like shadows in the fading light. I couldn't shake the lingering question: was I truly ready for this next chapter? The closer I got to my goals, the louder the critics in my mind became. What if I failed? What if I disappointed those who believed in me? Just as I felt myself spiraling into the abyss of overthinking, I found solace in the presence of my community. They reminded me that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a powerful ally in our journey together. As weeks turned into months, I realized that embracing growth had become an exhilarating dance with discomfort. Each moment of unease unraveled more layers of my potential. My life became a series of continuous awakenings where every small achievement compounded into something greater, something wildly transformative. But just as I felt myself flourishing, a sudden wave of doubt crashed over me, threatening to drown the newfound aspirations I had nurtured. In that moment, I stood at the threshold of self-discovery. My heart raced as I faced the looming storm of my fears, past mistakes that still whispered in my ear and insecurities that clung to my being. Could I truly embrace this path of growth without faltering? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, grounding myself in the knowledge that every great journey is punctuated by moments of uncertainty. I was ready to confront the challenges that lay ahead, not just with the intent to survive, but with the fierce determination to thrive. I realized that the essence of growth lies not in overcoming fears, but in dancing with them, in learning the rhythm of life's unpredictable song. Chapter 15. The Final Unraveling, Understanding My True Self. The Moment of Clarity. The air felt electric, charged with an energy that was almost palpable. I, Alex, stood on the precipice of my existence, gazing into the depths of my own consciousness. It was one of those rare moments that transcended time, a fleeting yet powerful instant that seemed to echo through eternity. I could feel the weight of my past, the echo of my failures, and yet beneath that heaviness, there was something else, something enlightening just waiting to surface. The realization hit me like a wave crashing against the rocks. I was not merely a sum of my mistakes or a prisoner of my circumstances. I was alive, and with aliveness came the potential for change. In that stillness, I began to unravel the threads of my identity, one by one. Each realization felt like a key turning in a lock, opening doors to truths I had avoided. The veil of ignorance that had accompanied my journey began to lift, allowing the light of understanding to reveal my truest self, embracing all aspects of myself. As I stood in the quiet of my room, I could feel the weight of my fragmented identity pressing down on me. So many versions of myself swirled in my mind, each representing a unique facet of my being, each one vying for recognition. The quiet was deafening, and for a fleeting moment, I wished to rewind time, to hide from all that I carried within. But life had a narrative of its own, and I was determined to embrace the chaos. It felt like an awakening, this realization that I could no longer discard parts of myself as if they were mere flaws in a manuscript yet to be written. My fears, my insecurities, my strengths, and even my vulnerabilities were all threads in the intricate tapestry of who I was. Each represented a story, an experience lived, whether bitter or sweet, and they clamored for acknowledgement. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, imagining each aspect of myself standing in front of me, ready to be introduced. "Welcome," I said softly, feeling a rush of warmth spreading through my chest. Grappling with the realization that every shadow and every light played a pivotal role in my journey, I understood that my strength lay in unity. I summoned the courage to weave together these disparate threads, to allow them to coexist harmoniously. The unwavering resolve of my ambition stood shoulder to shoulder with the tender fragility of my fears. I acknowledged the pain of past failures while celebrating the triumph of small victories. Each aspect of myself, the dreamer, the skeptic, the warrior, the healer, came forward, each bearing its weight, joining me in a collective embrace of acceptance. Yet, the tension simmered beneath this newfound unity. I could feel the resistance lurking just beneath the surface. Scars and old narratives whispering lies of inadequacy, urging me to shun the fragments I had fought so hard to welcome. Should I surrender to that voice, to retreat into a simpler existence? Or could I confront this inner battle with an unyielding resolve? As the shadows loomed, I felt my heart race. It was a moment, a single heartbeat, where the stakes felt higher than ever. If I chose to step forward, to truly embrace all that I was, what would the outcome be? The thought ignited a fierce determination within me, because all of me, collectively, was far stronger than the sum of my fears. And at that moment, I knew I had to overcome the tension that tried to pull me apart. I took a step towards that intricate tapestry, ready to embrace it fully. The journey continues. As I stood at the precipice of my newfound understanding, I, Alex, felt a surge of emotions flooding through me. The clarity I had long sought wasn't merely a destination, but the beginning of an uncharted expedition. I realized the journey of self-discovery was a continuously evolving path, one that promised growth in every step. It dawned on me that my journey was not just about uncovering the layers of my identity, but also about embracing the complexities that came with it. Each challenge I faced, each tear I shed, and every laughter shared were not simply moments. They were the fabric of who I was becoming. There lay immense strength in the juxtaposition of my fears and hopes, and I was finally beginning to accept every fragment of my being. Yet, as I reveled in my revelations, a creeping shadow loomed, doubt. Would I remain committed to this path amidst the chaos of life? The voices of my past echoed in my mind, whispering that this was merely a phase, a fleeting illusion of growth. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was awakened, and awakening was only the first step. Transformation demanded diligence, resilience, and an unwavering belief in my worth. In the flickering candlelight of my sanctuary, I contemplated my next steps. I understood that every stumble was a lesson veiled in disguise, each setback a mere detour guiding me back to my core. I longed to share these insights, but an unsettling thought tugged at me. Would others understand? Would my revelations resonate beyond my solitude? As I grappled with my fears, I was reminded of the countless souls I had encountered on my path. The connections I'd forged, the tears we shared, and the laughter that echoed in our conversations. They reminded me that I was not alone. My journey was interwoven with those around me, and perhaps my experiences could light the way for someone else lost in the shadows. Tension brewed within me as I realized that understanding myself was just the tip of the iceberg. The true challenge was to keep evolving, to keep pushing past the barriers I had once viewed as immovable. I felt a flicker of anxiety dance in my chest as the notion struck me. Self-discovery is not a linear path, but rather a winding road filled with unknowns and endless possibilities. Deep down, I recognized the seed of doubt could also be water for growth. My journey was an invitation to lean into uncertainty, to embrace each twist and turn with open arms. As I sat in contemplation, I understood my odyssey was not just mine to own. It belonged to every person willing to embark on their own quest for truth. Resolute, I made a promise to myself. I would navigate this ever-changing landscape with courage, embracing the triumphs and trials alike. After all, it was in the seeds of struggle that the most profound growth often took root. The journey continued, beckoning me into realms yet to be discovered, urging me to keep my heart and mind open to the infinite potential of my true self. As we conclude Mind Over Matter, Cultivating Mental Strength, remember that the journey toward mental resilience is ongoing. You've gained insights, learned valuable lessons, and hopefully found inspiration in the stories shared. Now, it's your turn to apply these principles in your life, to face challenges with newfound strength, and to continue growing. Keep this audiobook as a companion on your journey, a reminder that no matter the obstacle, you have the power to rise above it. Thank you for joining me on this path of transformation.